All right, so I guess I'll start off things. I'll just introduce since I invited Aidan to come on the not the podcast, but on the Goldspot YouTube channel here. Uh, we wanted to talk about National Handwriting Day that's coming up January 23rd, and it's on Monday. So a lot of people are talking about handwriting nowadays. A lot of people are very fascinated and figure who better to discuss this with somebody that has really awesome and totally respectable handwriting and has a almost Jedi like ability with especially with flex nibs. Like, are you kidding me with how awesome your flex nib
You
writing
flatter me.
is? So I wanted Aiden to come on here and kind of give some tips, some maybe some insider secrets, some really good tidbits that people could come away with here to be able to help them improve their handwriting, because some people might be still on the kick of New Year's resolutions and want to write more and want to improve their handwriting. So, first of all, Aiden, thank you for joining us here on this live broadcast this evening. I know it's late where I am, but it's also in the afternoon with you too. So I appreciate you taking the time out to hang out with us and to talk with folks in the audience here that might be new to you. So I just want to give you an introduction and, basically, like Aiden is a great, YouTube fountain pen guy, calligrapher, is also on TikTok and on Instagram as well, and is getting a good following going on there. Basically doing some awesome stuff with handwriting. So if you want to just give us a little background about yourself, Aiden.
Yeah. First of all, yeah, thank you very much for having me and for all the kind words. Um, yeah, I guess what is there to say? I mean, yeah, I've been passionate about handwriting and stationery and stuff for a pretty large portion of my life. I got started writing with fountain pens in high school, and
Awesome.
that really sent me down the rabbit hole and really started to get into handwriting then. Um, and I originally created an Instagram where I could post fountain pen stuff just so I could enter like giveaways that people were running. Um, and then I just kept posting the stuff I was writing, and that sort of snowballed into where we are now. So yeah.
Awesome. So how was it starting out at high school? Did like people look at you as if you were writing with a feather quill, and it's like what is this kid doing? Like,
Yeah.
you obviously you see this test is on a laptop right now, and why are we writing with everything longhand?
Yeah, it definitely was interesting at some moments. John in chat saying teaching cursive handwriting. That's awesome. I was actually the last like year in my middle school to learn cursive, so I'm definitely
Awesome.
glad for that. But I I really started using it in my sophomore years when I really started getting into fountain pens. I had one. I had a Lamy Safari in middle school that I use every now and again.
Awesome.
Um, but I was really serious into it in high school, and I use it in class and things like that. I had a Twisby Eco that I like use all the time in high school,
Awesome.
and there were some people, like a very small amount of people, that knew what it was and like thought it was super cool.
That
And
is
then
very cool.
yeah, I was fortunate enough to be in a position where pretty much everyone that was asking about it was just curious,
Mhm.
um, but they
So you
sort
never
of knew
had
what
you
it
never
was.
had anybody give you a power wedgie because you were into fountain pens,
Yeah, no,
stuff you
I
in a
wasn't
locker,
targeted for that at least. But yeah, it was mostly just I was sort of known as the guy that had all the fancy pens in high school, which I mean, I guess I'm still known as that guy now. But yeah, that's sort of where it all started. Uh, the one thing that I did get some negative emotions for was actually from my teachers when I would use pen to do math problems,
Oh,
um, which is always fun. But honestly, that just taught me to do math better. But yeah, other than that, yeah, it was all good vibes, and it really has been. I've never had anyone like react negatively to using pens. I feel like everyone at heart is sort of thinks it's cool.
yeah. So if you were to have, let's say, some advice to the younger generation, the Gen whatever Z or Z prime, I forget what it is these days, but the generation that now is going through middle school and high school, where would they get started in, especially since they don't really teach it at school anymore? How would they get started with improving their handwriting or using, fountain pens?
Yeah, I think really what's been helpful to me. I mean, of course, there are great online resources,
Hmm.
um, and those are always fun to check out. But I think what's really powerful nowadays is using social media, because I have to say, like, half of my, like, sort of handwriting acumen and specific style has come from just looking at what other people post on, like, Instagram or YouTube or whatever,
True.
and saying, "Ooh, I really like that. I'm gonna copy that and put that into my
Hmm.
handwriting now." And that's been a huge part of it, just, building a sort of social community around it and learning from each other.
That's awesome. Yeah, so John actually said too that so fourth grade students receive fountain pens from me at the end of the year. That's penabling. That's a good job there, John.
That is
That's
great.
that's a way to put it into the hands of the younger generation, because they really don't have any exposure or any, they get put a iPad or a phone in their hands before they would ever even know what a fountain pen is. So
Yeah, I think it's and also for, like, growing up in such a digital age, I think having that sort of physical connection to the page is a respite from that. Because technology is all good and well, and it definitely does a lot of amazing things, but, I
mhm.
mean, there's nothing like just sitting down at the end of the day and getting some writing in.
So let's just say, let's maybe put into some context here, and just say that, I'm suspecting, and that's why I'm going to lead into this question. But were you a good student also because of your ability to take notes in handwriting?
I think that's a good question, because I think I've been, I've tried to be a good student my whole life. Uh I definitely, I try to, like, pay attention in class and stuff like that, and I think that's what really helps is, taking physical notes, and of course, writing with fountain pens and learning how to do it with good handwriting has just made it more entertaining for me, which makes
Hmm.
it more likely for me to pay attention in class and things like that.
Hmm.
Um, I think personally, I'm more of a physical learner, so I really like writing things down, and um, instead of sort of listening or looking in class and not writing anything down, I think notes are super valuable. Um, yeah, I'm sensing a no. But yeah, I think it's really been helpful for me. I um, even still to this day, when I'm taking much more advanced engineering classes that are very uh, math oriented and things like that, a pen still really helps.
Yeah, for sure. And it's I always feel that it's more comprehensive for me to write things down and take notes handwritten than
Mm.
it is to, let's say, just capture it. I know some people do, like, they just do a voice memo, they do the entire lecture that way, or they just work off of the PowerPoint slides. But I always find it much more helpful to handwrite the main key points or anything that just has that connection in my head that I could start to build my understanding around, and then just jot the notes from there. And especially too, as I feel like with the more creative aspects of school, like if you're working on a project or you're doing something, like an essay or something, and you're trying to write an outline, doing it by hand far easier for me at least than doing it, on typing or text to speech and things like that. So,
Note taking destroy my handwriting. I think it's really hard because there's a part of me that really wants to, like, write as fast as I can when I'm taking notes, and it does sort of require me to slow down a bit. Um, so especially when things are going pretty fast, sometimes my handwriting can break down a bit, but I still try to keep it as good as I can.
yeah, and I think that's where a lot of people, I feel that they tend to struggle a bit when it comes to handwriting, is the speed aspect. Because when you want to write, especially if you're creating ideas, or you're having to take notes very quickly, you're probably pushing it a faster pace, like your brain can't keep up with your hand, and or vice versa.
Mhm.
And it's much harder to keep a very clean looking script or whatever if you're doing it quickly,
Mm.
as opposed to if you're being slow and deliberate and taking your time with every letter. uh how would, let's say, somebody be able to, to bridge the gap between speed and clarity when it comes to handwriting?
Yeah, I think one of the most valuable things for me from that perspective has just been practice as much as possible, because I feel the more that I write, the better I can keep consistent letter forms at speed, to
Hmm.
where when I was first starting trying to perfect my handwriting, I had to really do it slowly and concentrate. But the more and more that I build muscle memory,
Right.
the sort of faster that I can execute, proper letter forms.
I kind of think of it maybe like if you're learning the guitar, if you're learning how to do an awesome rock solo on a guitar, and you see the professionals do it, and they're doing it at lightning speed, and your brain can't comprehend just how fast it's going. But everybody starts out with, very deliberate, slow, either picking and placing your fingers on the on the frets in the right spot, and you just, the more that you keep doing it, the more that you build up the speed, and then eventually you become Eddie Van Halen, with
Yeah,
a pen. So
exactly. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, I look at, all those people back in the day, like if you look at old like letters and things like that, where it's
mhm,
just perfect handwriting, like just from, your average person. And I think it's just because, they had that's the only thing that they did in terms of like writing communication. They couldn't type, out their letters on their computer. So they just had to get that practice in every day, and they didn't have a choice. And it made their handwriting better.
and I think because it was the only method of communication, that there
Mhm.
wasn't like a typed backup, there wasn't like an email that was sent or anything, that there was no, like, if you didn't get your point across and do it clearly, there was no like, oh, I could just resend another thing, or do something else that's just be able to. What are you doing there? So chat. Oh, I have a chat on here. Doesn't look like it. Yeah, it pops up when. Yeah, she's she's showing me the chat on her phone. That's my daughter. She's showing me the chat on my phone here, like the chat log. But thank you for that. But yeah, that, like, because it's the only, it's the only, it was the only way to clearly, like, have a way to communicate with people, that there
Mm.
wasn't an email fallback or a social media or an emoji, that's like they had to be perfect with their clarity of handwriting, and,
Yeah.
also too is that, like, paper expensive, fountain pen still expensive, and I don't think it was really as democratized as it is now, with being able to write with, the ballpoints everywhere, and I mean, fountain pens are still, of course, here too,
Mm.
but that it wasn't like, it was like a privilege to be able to do that. So,
Yeah,
but
absolutely. Here, let's see what's the chat saying. Um, I guess it is a bit of a secret. But yeah, I
yeah.
think I agree with John. It definitely has emotion involved. It really is a sort of reflection on the person,
Mhm.
as well. You know.
Yeah, I mean, which is to say that a lot of people feel rather self-conscious about their writing, because especially they don't think that it's, as good, or it should be better. uh but I'm always surprised when I do get compliments on writing, that they're like, oh man, I was like, I think it's okay. I mean, I don't equate myself to, let's say, some of the master calligraphers, like a Jake Weidman, or
Mhm.
Michael Sull, or it's like they're on a whole other level, and I just think it's good. But a lot of people are, oh, it's so beautiful. It's like that sometimes can have something to do with also the fact that I'm using fountain pens primarily, because then you get the inks looking really nice with the shading and the sheen, and sometimes using like a stub nib or a flex nib could also give it a very exotic look without being technically perfect.
Mhm.
So, what would be like some things that some people could do maybe without like having to necessarily improve their handwriting, but kind of like make it look nicer, in just in just like a very very few steps, like just basically be able to make it it's like maybe it was like what's like a hack maybe that we could say that could lead to better handwriting in a quick sort of fashion.
Yeah, I think one thing that I struggle with even now, but that really does, uh, immediately make my writing look better, it's something that I have to focus on, but it's, whenever you're writing when I first started writing out, like, my letters were sort of all over the place, right?
Hmm.
But when you're writing along the baseline, making your ascenders and descenders at the same angle to the baseline just makes it look good, even if your actual letters aren't really that well formed. Just
Hmm.
making sure you have a consistent angle. So when you look at the page as a whole, it just looks consistent. Like, there's French lined paper that's kind of like this.
Right, with the
Like,
slant.
yeah, to where if your letters, your ascenders and descenders go along those lines, even if you don't really have that much practice, or if you don't really know how you want your letter shapes to look,
Hmm.
it still looks much better just to have a consistent angle on your handwriting. Like
Yeah.
that, and consistent spacing as well, which the French ruled paper helps with as well. Just having that consistency is better than, uh, well, it's not better than, but having consistency means that you can have your handwriting look good even if you haven't perfected the exact way that you want to do it.
Right, right. Absolutely. I totally agree with that. And that's like one of the easiest I would say easy because I mean it is still difficult, especially if you're used to writing it a certain way. You've got the muscle memory built up and everything, but that's probably like the easiest way to get make it more clearer and consistent.
Mhm.
Um, and also too is this I remember reading somebody's comment saying that what if I tend to have like a slant going one way, slant going another way. Well, one of the things that I thought of is that a lot of times like our hand could be very stationary while you're writing, and you won't want to like lift your hand up above the paper, so you just kind of
Exactly.
start pivoting, and that pivoting will then cause the slant to go from one end to the other because
Yep.
like you're kind of writing around at an angle and you're not moving your hand. So one of the things I would definitely do is just be aware of your hand as you're writing down the line, and just move your hand along with the line. Naturally you would feel like you would do that more if you already have the slant lines in there in place because you're conscientiously making that same mark. But if you don't have the slant lines, I would try to just keep moving your hand along and then making the same downward strokes, but just making sure that you're not just pivoting your hand as you go along.
Yeah, and I agree with the chat that italics and flex nibs are both great to, like, make immediate improvements just in the aesthetics of the writing.
Hmm.
I also think another thing that, I'm reminded of now that you mentioned that, people, yeah, exactly, that use their wrist. I feel it's a lot easier to maintain consistency if you're pivoting from your arm and from your shoulder as you're writing rather than your wrist, because your wrist, it does kinda wanna curve around the page as you're writing. Whereas if you're using your arm, you can sort of, uh, even if you're not moving, like, your arm at all or your body,
Hmm.
it traces a much wider arc, so it still looks much more consistent as you're going up and down on the page.
Absolutely. And what would you recommend maybe like would be a good starting place? Would it be better to, let's say, go print first and then try out cursive, or maybe do cursive because that would be a little bit quicker as you're trying to like put the letter forms together.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think at the end, I suppose it could just come down to personal preference and whatever
Hmm.
works. I think in order to practice consistency, whichever one that you're more comfortable with in the first place, yeah, the Palmer method used arm style first. Yeah, I'm a big fan
Hmm.
of the Palmer method. That's what I originally learned. Um, I think if you like learned cursive back in the day, getting back into it is great. But I think if you've never learned it before, I think consistency is a great attribute to have regardless of whatever writing style you're using. So I think just whatever writing style you're most immediately comfortable with, go for that and shoot for the consistency first, and then uh, it'll make your cursive or your print better. I think if you want to learn cursive no matter what, go for it. But I would say no matter what, consistency is important.
And then you would suggest then, for like finding out more about cursive, because I also do the same thing too. I love looking through Instagram and finding people who have awesome handwriting, calligraphers on there, and then just kind of picking up pieces here and there. But for somebody who's going from scratch, would you also recommend doing it that way too? Or maybe is there any other resource that they might be able to lean on to learn cursive, or Palmer or Spencerian method?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, definitely, uh, social media is great. Personally, I originally when I started out, um, I learned from IAMPIth resources, like the sort of Penman organization.
Hmm.
Um, they have PDFs of really old handwriting textbooks on their website that you can download. Um,
I think that
they've
is it's spelled, if anybody's interested. It reads like I am Peth, like PETH, so
mm,
IAMPETH.com. So that does have like a lot of good resources on there, downloadable templates, and um, even I think they call it letter exemplars, where it will show you all of the letters in a particular style, so that you could just go and copy. You could print them out and just copy them straight down.
mhm. Yeah. Yeah, definitely, and I think, I have definitely, uh, won't deny that every once in a while when I wanna, like, make a post on Instagram or something like that, and I don't really know how I wanna start off with, like, the capital letter, I'll just look up, like, on Google, like, Spencerian G or, like, whatever, just to see what comes up and what I like. But yeah, and, yeah, I mean, everyone on Instagram is really standing on the shoulders of giants. I mean, there have been so many people that have published amazing things about handwriting and you know examples of different types of scripts and drills and stuff like that. That as long as you maintain your uh, a sort of consistent practice and learning and stuff like that, you really can't go wrong.
And so, how do you practice?
The way that I really sort of originally cut my teeth practicing my handwriting, and I still do it pretty often to this day, is I take a book or something like that that I'm interested in and just
Hmm.
start copying it. Um, the first one that I ever did, I filled up almost an entire Leuchtturm like A5 notebook.
Hmm.
I had a copy of Civil Disobedience by Henry David Thoreau, and I copied the entire thing, like word for word, into that notebook, just being super, super careful. How to spell that site? IAMPETH is IAMPETH.com. Um, but yeah, that was the first one. Then I also wrote Walden. I started doing The Hobbit and Meditations by Marcus Aurelius.
Oh,
Uh,
nice.
yeah,
I
just
like that one.
yeah, exactly. And it's not too long, and it's interesting to go along with. I also did The Witcher,
Hmm.
the first book. So yeah, just really,
So just straight copying from start to
yeah.
finish, just right. And do you do it in a particular style, or do you like switch styles whenever it's like with like different people use dialogue? Like does it maintain consistency throughout?
Yeah, that's interesting. I've never really thought of changing up styles. I try to keep it as consistent as possible.
Hmm.
But I will say sometimes I, say like, "Oh, I'm gonna use flourishes," or "I'm gonna keep it more like standard." Yeah, I am a bit of a bookworm, as the chat says. The book I'm reading right now is called Midnight in Chernobyl. It's about the Chernobyl disaster. It's a nonfiction book.
Oh, nice, nice. In the midst of Atomic Habits, a second reread of that, just because it's the beginning of the year, lots of like goal setting, resolutions, and things. And I
Very
just
nice.
want to.
Yeah.
I read it a few years ago. I did an audiobook on it, but I never took any notes. And I really want to this time incorporate it, I think, more and take some notes on it so that I could then build it into a lot of the goals I want to reach this year. Of
Yeah.
which one is I have Michael Soul's book, and I really want to open it. I've had it for a few months, and I've been wanting to like really dive into it and just go page by page and do my own thing with my own improvements with handwriting. So especially when it comes to flex nibs, because I do love flex nibs. I know you do too.
Oh yeah.
I have one that I know that you have at least
Ooh,
one of
very
these
nice.
Leonardo Momentos
Yeah.
Ara Grandes. Um, and I was wondering because I know there's a lot of people that also like using flex nibs too. Like you have a couple of great videos on flex nibs, particularly talking about like what types of flex nib do you like best, how to use flex nibs. I think was the more recent one. But maybe you want to just kind of maybe give us like a cliff notes version on how somebody might get into using flex nibs when it comes to cursive or trying some Spencerian calligraphy or Palmer method calligraphy.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I love flex nibs. I mean, come on. They're amazing. They're probably the most satisfying thing about fountain pens. Um, I think I did publish a video a couple months ago about getting into flex writing and how to do it. Um, and pretty much, if I remember correctly, the main things that I talked about were uh, keeping the nib parallel to uh, the direction that you're writing. So, I mean, you can flex it however you want. Like you can flex on the downstroke if you're an underwriter and things like that,
Right.
but just don't move side to side while you're flexing. And then uh, be careful. Like, don't push it too hard. Over time, you can sort of learn the limits of your flex nib, but it breaks my heart whenever I see those not safe for life posts on the fountain pen subreddit of destroyed nibs. Um,
One of my favorite sayings is every fountain pen is a flex nib at least once.
yeah, exactly. That is true. But yeah, I think they're wonderful tools, but they're not invincible. So I think
Hmm.
it's always good to be careful with them. I think just as regular handwriting, uh, flex nibs are the exact same, where it just takes practice.
Hmm.
Um, and it is a really different kind of writing. When I do regular script, I'm usually more of a side writer, so I'm like
Hmm.
writing from the side. Uh, but when I do flex, I'm always an underwriter, just
Yeah,
so I
I
can
mean
get those
yeah,
downstrokes.
it's the necessity, and I kind of find myself doing that too. That's it's like I could kind of change my position up, kind of roll my wrist around, but when it comes to flex nibs, and not all of them are made the same too, which is kind of it's it's challenging to get a hold of because certain all not all flex nibs are made equal. They're definitely
Mhm.
are not. Are all on like a spectrum of like their ability to flex, how much you can push it, what angles are going to be it's going to be more effective to use on, and just how much line variation you can expect using it.
Yeah.
So one of the pens I had just gotten recently was the Blue Dew,
Oh
which
yes.
has got it's got a really nice flex nib on it, but it's just it's very particular. I noticed about how you approach writing with it, and
Hmm.
it can have a lot of like hard starts and a little bit of some skipping here and there. But when I really get it going, it is a beautiful. It works a lot like the Zebra G nib
Hmm.
in that regard. And
Very
I've been
nice.
using it for like a few months, and or not a few months, actually, probably like more like a month or so. And and just wanted to see like how it performs over time and how the nib will hold up because I suspect that maybe like the Zebra G, it may not be as robust of a nib like having a stainless steel or 14 karat gold nib would be,
Hmm.
but I'm enjoying it. It's something I'm just experimenting with. But what Yorkie Mama had just written in the comments there, the 912 FA is like
That's a great
I
one.
know that's also your jam too, but it's you have to have it with the ebonite feed in order to make sure that flow keeps up.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, let's
Yeah.
see. think
What if somebody wanted to get into it relatively inexpensively? What would you think would be like the best option to kind of dip the toes in the water of flex nibs?
yeah, here I can see Kathy asked, my YouTube channel is Aidan Bernal, AIDANBERNAL. And then I know someone asked what my favorite flex was. I can sort of give a comprehensive answer. The first flex nib that I ever got was a Noodler's Ahab, which I think is a great entry level um, flex nib. You know, it gives you a pretty good amount of flex for what it's worth. It requires a lot of pressure, so it kind of is a little dangerous jumping from that to a gold flex nib to where
Yeah.
it just feels totally different. Um, but I think that's a good starting point. You know, Fountain Pen Revolution also makes great stuff too. Those sort of steel, any pens with the steel flex nib with the very long slit in the tines are great to start with, and they're
Mhm,
relatively inexpensive. I also think, you know, vintage flex is a possibility. Um,
mhm.
that's all. It's a little more difficult. You kind of got to know your stuff. Yeah, I know some people don't love the Ahab because it could be inconsistent. I really like tinkering on pens, and so that was right up my alley. But I know it's not for everyone. Um, in that vein, I think usually Fountain Pen Revolution pens are relatively reliable. I know there are also other great sources. I know Yovo makes a elastic nib nowadays that you mentioned is on like the Leonardo like this, and
Yes.
is on similar things with like Conklin and Monteverde, which are all
Mhm,
pretty good. They're not quite as effective, I would say, in terms of the amount of flex that you get,
mhm.
but I think they're still good to practice with.
Yeah.
Um, but then, of course, if you want to graduate to like a gold flex nib, this is my favorite modern flex nib, the
The
Aurora.
Optima.
Yeah, it's out of this world, and it actually doesn't give that much more line variation than the steel flex nib,
Mhm.
but it just feels amazing on the page. Like the feedback and response it gives, um, it's just out of this world. I also
Did you have that modified at all, or was that the stock
this
version of
is
the nib?
this is the stock version. Yeah,
Okay.
um, yeah.
Yeah.
I
Chance
think
says Scribo. Did you try? Have you tried Scribo yet?
I have not. I know they have the same tooling that Omos used to have.
Mhm.
The Omos Extra Flexibile, that's one of my Grail pens. Like any Omos with that nib, that's my Grail pen.
All right. So I have to make a note. I will be sending you at least to try out a Scribo with at least I think you could go with like a 14 karat extra fine in the field of flex because they're
Mm,
very I've had both before. I've owned an Ogiva with the extra flexibile nib,
mhm.
and I've compared them side by side. It's like pretty much nearly identical. I would say the snapback's a little bit better on the Scribo. So
Interesting.
yeah, I think you'll really like it. So
Yeah, I
you
would love to
definitely
give
need
that a
to
go.
experience that.
Yeah. Also, I think the secret answer with an asterisk in terms of my favorite flex nib. I
Mhm.
mean, it's not really that secret because I post it all the time. But the Regalia Writing Labs cross flex, I have one of them, and I treasure it very much because Ralph doesn't make nibs anymore.
Yeah, that is
Um,
such a shame because that
but
thing
yeah,
is wicked cool.
I sort of feel bad posting it all the time because people can't get it anymore. But yeah, I just love it so much. It makes writing amazing.
But see, that's the flex in the flex, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yeah,
It is a bit of a
my
flex.
my Gen Z daughter like totally just giggled on that one. She's like listening. She's like, "Yeah, you're such a dork, dad."
Yeah, I got that one at the I think I got it at the 2017 San Francisco show. That was a
Mhm.
great pickup.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they were expensive. I
Yeah.
remember, like I think like what like 150 or something like that, or
Yeah, it
north
was
of
somewhere
that.
around there. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, but the thing is that it's a Yovo housing, right?
Yes, yeah. So I
So
can put it in so many pens.
yeah, just take your pick. You could just put in so many different pens, and you know, even though it is way more costly than just a regular Yovo nib, it's just that it just operates on a different level entirely. So
Yeah, and it has that amazing flexible nib factory ebonite feed. It's just I am astonished that it doesn't railroad more.
yeah,
It's crazy.
with how wide the line variation is, yeah,
Mhm.
definitely, it's a it is a beast, and
Yeah,
it's a shame. I really wish that I really wish that the Yovo stainless steel would be that. Like that would be the entry for people to try out
yeah,
Flex on a Momento Zero or a Conklin and things like, because that would just be that would be a lot more to what people would consider like wet noodle or like a vintage Flex that you would because when they've watched a video like yours and you see one that's like it's like a YouTube short that's like over millions and millions of views. You get the impression that like that's how people who have never seen a fountain pen before, just the general public, will see like this is a flex nib. It's like, oh my god, that's a flex. They're like, but first of all, the people who know, just like you said, like people who know is like that's not a nib that's current production out there everywhere. That's only a
yeah,
nib that was made by a special guy that took a nib and just did all sorts of magic to it and then
hmm,
doesn't sell them anymore. So this
yep,
is not a common occurrence. This is very, very special. But I would love it if there was an option that you could have people posting a picture, a video of them doing flex, and it would be something that other people could just easily pick up,
yeah,
for like $100 or something. As I know it's going to be pretty tough to do that in a very like large production sort of thing. But I'm thinking that it could be a little bit more available for people.
yeah. If I had all the time and money in the world, I would make it my life's goal to try and like find out a way to produce something like that on a bigger scale. That'll
Hmm.
just be like, I mean, all those vintage pens have such like beautiful flex nibs that, I mean, people go on about how we can't really make them anymore, but I really want to try.
That's like nuclear uh, fusion right now at the moment. It's just like you would hope that somebody comes up with this great way for us to produce
Yeah.
like clean energy and awesome vintage writing flex nibs, but you
Yeah, we're
know,
10 years away from being 10 years away.
yeah, we're far away from that. But
Exactly.
so besides, of course, on social media, when do you find yourself applying your best handwriting skills, like in real life?
Yeah, I mean, you know, if I'm entirely honest, it's not a very applicable skill. Um, I mean, I love posting it on social media, but the other 2 main things that I use it for, well, 3 really. Of course, I still take, notes in my classes all the time,
Mhm.
although that won't be happening much for much longer because 'cause I'm in my senior year of
Oh,
college.
nice.
But, I also, just when I keep track of things in sort of like a planner style, uh, sort of notebook, I also, just personally write for myself, keeping track of like to-do lists and things like that. And
Do
then the
you
other thing
get
is,
like do you get friends and relatives asking you to like write invitations or like things for them that like write it's just like, oh, just pick Aiden, just pick up this pen and just write something like a sign I need to do for a party. Like, do you get that a lot? Do you just get the writing assignments just thrown at you?
yeah, I have gotten that before. Um, I really have never tried to turn it into like a business sort of thing. Although I
Mhm.
suppose if I really wanted to apply myself in that sort of way, maybe I can make it happen. But I've had people not only ask for things like that, and then also like wedding invitations and stuff like that. And I've never
Mhm.
really accepted those like big orders. I've always unfortunately turned them down because I'm sort of too afraid to like commit to something that big that is out of my you know wheelhouse that I've never really done specifically before. But I mean, one of
Mhm.
these days, I might as well just bite the bullet and go ahead and uh, you know share my handwriting with someone that isn't just me, because the only other way that I've really done that is through snail mail. Having pen pals and things like that.
That's
Um,
cool.
yeah, but I guess the rest of it is just I'm you know sitting in my apartment writing to myself. As sad as that sounds.
Well, I could totally relate to that because it just it does it is very much like a personal thing,
Mhm.
and just being able to do that myself and then just to be able to read my own handwriting, and then also because like you said it's enjoyable for you to engage in that, to like when you're doing your work, or you're being creative, or just taking notes and things like that. um it just makes it so that you're just enjoy the process a lot more. It's not as boring, and just,
Exactly, yeah.
yeah, and it connects more with your brain, helps you learn and stuff. um but as far as like the actual application where people are like, oh man, that's so beautiful, I'd be willing to, could you do like this for me, like write this on a chalkboard or things like that. I do get those a lot too. Like it happens to me. It's like, oh, here's a chalk marker. It's like, I don't write with chalk markers. I write with fountain pens. How am I supposed to use this? It's like, oh, you'll figure it out. And then
Yeah.
surprisingly, I'm like, I don't really think it's that great. And then they're like, oh, this is amazing. This is great. Because I mean, I think I always take it for granted that a lot of people like write all the time, and I'm just like, yeah, I guess I have good handwriting. I don't know. So
Yeah, back when I was in high school, um, I was on I was the captain of our ultimate frisbee team,
oh,
and,
nice.
yeah, we, all had our own, frisbees that we had to put our names on, and
Hmm.
everyone wanted me to write their name on their frisbee for them. So we had this massive Sharpie, and I was like, "I have no idea what to do with this," but I tried my best, and people liked it, so
It's there's like ridges on the frisbee and everything. It's like I just try my best. I don't know.
Exactly.
It's just to me it looks like garbage, but to you it may look like, illuminated manuscript, and you're just like, oh my god, this is the holy frisbee.
Exactly.
I played that in college. I just like, playing around with some of my friends. It was like probably one of the like fun times that we just had messing around. I love doing ultimate frisbee. It's
Yeah,
a lot of fun.
it's a great sport.
Yeah, for sure. So you only have a year left in or you're in your senior year.
Yep, yeah,
Oh,
the end is
nice.
approaching fast. I've
Nice.
only got,
So
yeah, like 6 months left.
where is so are you just planning on, let's say, just doing YouTube full time and social media full time, or are you going to be like an influencer, or are you're coming out of college with a degree and you're going to then jump into a full-time profession being a calligrapher? Where's the path going?
I think it would be great if I could transition social media stuff into something bigger,
Hmm.
although I don't know if it's super possible right now. I think it's definitely something that I'll keep at part-time and try to keep growing and see what I can do in the future.
Yeah.
Because I think the one downside of mostly creating short form content is it's not nearly as monetizable as some other forms of content. But yeah, currently I'm doing a civil engineering degree, and
Oh, nice.
I also my internship right now is with the Seattle Department of Transportation. So hopefully, my full time job coming out of college will be something in the realm of transportation engineering. I'm big on public transit and things like that. That's one of my other hobbies. So sort of multitasking, doing that with also growing my social medias and handwriting and calligraphy and all that stuff, seeing where that takes me. And if one day I can convert this passion into a full time gig, um, that would be a dream come true. But
I'm sure there's going to be
yeah,
some crossover involved, because I kind of feel that there's some CAD drafting going on with the civil engineering and things. So
oh
there
yeah,
I'm like seeing lines and structure and lots of very fine details that you have to put in, and it just sounds to me a lot like you probably had to do some of this at least by hand at some point, or
hmm,
if you're sketching out like a rough draft of how a city subway system's going to get laid out, and then you put it into, so like the kind of mentality that it takes to like have to take something that's in your head and then put it out there in a precise manner, very controlled and a systematic sort of way, which I think that's also what handwriting is too, because you do have to put together all of your thoughts in a coherent manner and have it look very pretty and uniform.
yeah, definitely. Here, I think someone asked what my favorite ink was. Um, I have a few options, but I think my favorite is Iroshizuku Tsukiyo. I think you can't go wrong with it. It's good for it's interesting on its own, but it's also professional looking ink that you can use in, every environment. So yeah, can't go wrong with Sukiyo.
I love those types that are at least they're passable. If you were to write that to somebody or put it on a form, it's in the realm of like, oh, is this a blue ink? It's yeah, I guess it could be, you know.
Yeah, exactly. It's great.
At least it's not like hot flamingo pink, you know. It's
Yeah.
that oh, I can't scan this in. It's not showing up. It's way too light. So
Yeah. Oh man, and like I have a bottle of Noodler's Yellow. Oh my
mhm.
god, illegible. It's impossible to read that. It's good. I
It
really
just
like,
burns the
yeah,
eyes.
exactly. I like super vibrant and strong inks, but it does help when you can actually read them.
Hmm. For sure, for sure. So, um, what would you think would be some things that people could do? To like, well, we did cover we covered you do like a lot of copy writing straight from books. We did say about let's say spacing and ascender and descender alignment as far as that. But what do you think? What else could somebody do in like let's say 5 minutes a day? Let's say all that they had to commit to improving their handwriting was 5 minutes a day. What would you maybe recommend them to do to help with just making their handwriting a little bit more clearer, a little bit more readable?
Yeah, I think if you wanna just do something quickly, some people just try to write out alphabets directly,
Hmm.
but I think because your letters have to connect at the end of the day, at least if you're writing cursive. I'm a big fan of all things pangrams. The
Yes.
quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog, or whichever sort of sentence you want to pick. As long as you are using a sentence that has every letter in it, it's sort of
Hmm.
gonna kill two birds with one stone, where you're practicing every letter, but also
Yes.
practicing how they connect. So when I'm just bored in class and definitely totally paying attention. Um, I'll just be writing like the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog over and over again in my notebook, uh, and it definitely helps to a degree, um, both in terms of getting myself just to get that muscle memory in terms of what each letter feels like, but
Hmm.
also just just doing it. Like it's you got to get the ball rolling somehow, and so getting that momentum going of practicing your handwriting, I think it's the first step is the hardest, and to get that started, I think it's the biggest thing.
And it's not like just writing A through Z, like you said, it's just A, B, C, D, E, F, G. It's actually writing words, and they could be funny, amusing sorts of sentences. Like you said, quick brown fox jumps over lazy dog. There's a sphinx of black quartz, judge my vow.
It's a good
When
one.
zombies arrive, quickly fax judge Pat. There's one with the dozen liquor jugs. I can't remember the whole thing, but there's a whole bunch of them that if it just immediately comes to mind. Your mind doesn't even need to search for something to write. You could
Hmm.
just be that's why I end up doing usually to put like a fountain pen through its paces is that's the first
Yeah,
thing that just comes to my head. It's like, well, what am I going to write to try this nib out and see like if it's working properly. It's like this quick brown fox just happens to pop in my head, and there you go. Like it's
exactly.
just something quick and easy you could do just to test it out.
Yeah,
So awesome, awesome advice. Yeah, so I mean, I know we've been on for a little bit now, so I mean, I know it's kind of late where you're probably looking to get dinner and stuff like that. I'm looking to get the kiddos off to bed, so I appreciate you hanging out, and I think I'm really hoping that uh, people got a lot out of this conversation. That uh, people will be opening up their notebooks or their paper tablets and going to start giving some a go at some writing and practicing and maybe using some of the things that we talked about in here that will help improve their handwriting. So, did you like tell folks where to find you on all the different socials, just so that they could follow the illustrious Aidan Bernal.
yeah. Thank you, big thank you for having me on. This has been a ton of fun, and thanks to everyone for watching. Um, you can find me at Aidan Bernal, AIDANBERNAL, on YouTube and Instagram, and on TikTok, it's Aidan underscore Bernal. because someone took Aidan Bernal. So,
Ah,
yep, it happens. But you can find me on all three of those platforms. And yeah, thanks to everyone for watching. Thanks for all the love and chat. And yeah,
yeah.
thanks again for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was a pleasure having this chat with you. And happy handwriting day as it comes up.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to
And
it.
yeah, we'll be in touch. And you have to, if I forget, just remind me about that Scribo, because you definitely have to try it.
Will do.
As a flex nib appreciator, I think that you'll very much enjoy that nib as well. So
Awesome. Sounds
but
fantastic.
if anybody has any questions, either for Aidan or myself, I'm hoping, as this is the first time I'm doing the co-live YouTube thing. I'm hoping it works the same way as Instagram does and TikTok, where it's just this, like, it will leave this available for everybody to watch. And if you do have any comments, just leave them below, or you could just contact me, Tom at goldspot.com, if you wanted to, and we'll help you out with all things handwriting. So, all right, I appreciate you guys. Thank you, and stay inky, my friends. Take care. Let's close this here.